Okay, so sine. So we have three sides. Okay, I need your attention real quick. Okay, so we have our triangle. We have 8.1 is all about right triangles. Okay, so who's heard of SOHCAHTOA? All right, so that's usually how teachers explain, the three sides of a triangle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So let's go ahead and put our theta down. So all of these ratios are using A as theta. So go ahead and put your theta symbol right there. Theta could be at C or A, but for this example, we put theta at A. So the hypotenuse will always be across from the right angle. That never changes. Adjacent means next to. If I say that we're adjacent to each other, that means we're right next to each other. So this is adjacent to angle A, and this is opposite of angle A. Now let's talk about how we're going to notate things. So go ahead and fill in the blank. Capital letters are going to be the angles. Lowercase letters are the sides. Okay? And they're always across from each other. So looking at this diagram right here where we have our theta, little a is going to be opposite of angle A. So this would be little a. Okay, do you see how we have our letters, our A's are across from each other? So what is the hypotenuse going to be? What lowercase letter will we use to indicate the hypotenuse? B. And what about the adjacent side? C. And that's really important because as we're solving our triangle, you want to make sure you're drawing your diagram correctly because none of the diagrams will be drawn for you. Anytime you're using your calculator to find an angle measure, angle measures, we have to use the inverse function. So on your calculator, you should see sine, cosine, tangent. And above it, you'll see the inverse. Inverse sine, inverse cotangent, inverse cosine. To get to the inverse, you have to hit the second function key. Also, from this point forward, all of our angles will be in degrees. So we're not using any more radians. Okay, so everything is in degree mode. You want to make sure your calculator is in degree mode. It should usually say DEG at the top to show degrees. If it says RAD, that means it's in radians. And when we start actually typing in numbers, if you're not getting the right number, I can help you change the mode of the calculator if you need help. All right, so let's get to it. So for number 1, it says use the given information to solve. Whenever you're solving a triangle, that means you're finding your missing information. Okay, all triangles have 3 angles and 3 sides. So when you solve it, you're trying to tell me what I didn't give you. So let's go ahead and draw our right triangle. It told me that angle C is 90. So I have to put C there. And then I'm going to put A at the top, B at the bottom. You can always flip A and B. I always put whatever comes first in the alphabet at the top. That's just how I do it. So now let's label what we know. They told us little a is 7. Between what 2 angles will little a fall? B and C. So I'm going to put a 7 right here. They also said that, notice how that's a capital B. So that means we're talking about an angle. So that would be inside. So 50 degrees is here. So that's all we know, which means that we're trying to find the measure of angle A. We're also trying to find little a. And we're trying to find not little a. We already know little a. So we're trying to find little b. And we're trying to find little c. So the easiest to find would probably be A. Because going back to geometry, what do you know about triangle sum? How many degrees are in a triangle? 180 degrees. There's a what's the sum of the angles? I'm sorry. What's the sum of the angles inside of a triangle? 180. So if I'm trying to find angle A, it would be 180 minus 90 minus 50. So angle A equals 180 minus 90 minus 50, which is what? And go ahead, type it in your calculators if you need to.
Isn't this the 345 triangle?
We don't have it. We have a 7.
Oh, those are the sides, not the angles.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now let's go ahead and find the measure of side B. So if I'm looking for side B, so that would be this side here. Using that 50-degree angle as my reference, is B opposite, adjacent, or the hypotenuse? Opposite. What is 7? Adjacent. So those are my two sides. I have opposite and adjacent. What tangent ratio? What tangent? I just told you. What ratio uses opposite and adjacent? Tangent. So we have the tangent of 50 degrees is equal to opposite, which is B, over 7. And we have to solve that for B. This is a proportion. So you can always make this over 1 and cross multiply it if you like to. When you do that, you should get that B equals 7 times the tangent of 50. So in your calculators, go ahead and type in 7 times the tangent of 50. Yes?
Why is the scientific getting CP? Is there a reason why it's B, or did you just input that way?
Wait, one more time. Why is the...
Like, is there a specific reason why that side has to be B?
It has to be across from angle B.
Okay.
Yeah. So it has to be, little b is across from big B. So we're going to do everything to the 10th place in 8.1. So if you type in 7 times tangent of 50, you should get 8.3. If you did not, then that means you might be in the wrong mode. And if you raise your hand, I can help you put it in the correct mode. All right, so now to find side C. If I'm trying to find side C, let me go ahead and take this off because we already found B. So if I'm trying to find side C, what would side C be? What side of the triangle would that represent? Hypotenuse. Good. So now I'm using adjacent and hypotenuse. So what trig ratio uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Cosine. So we have the cosine of 50 degrees equals adjacent over the hypotenuse. Go ahead and cross multiply it. So we have C times the cosine of 50 degrees equals 1 times 7. Divide both sides by the cosine of 50 degrees. So C equals 7 divided by cosine 50. Go ahead, type that in your calculator. Who got 10.2? Oh, sorry, 10.9. Sorry, who got 10.9? Okay. You shouldn't need parentheses, but if you're not getting that, maybe you have to divide by parentheses cosine 50. But it should work if you just type in 7 divided by cosine 50. All right, let's look at example 2. 7 divided by cosine 50. All right, let's go ahead and draw our picture out. So I got another right triangle. And this time we're using B, C, and D. It says B is my 90 degrees. So I'm going to put the B here. I'm going to put C at the top, D at the bottom. They told me that the measure of angle C is 43. So I'm going to put my 43 on the inside. Angles go inside. And then they also told me that little b is 14. Remember, little b has to be opposite of big B. So little b would be right here. We got to figure out what's missing. So the easiest thing to find would be the measure of angle D. Measure of angle D is going to equal 180 minus 90 minus 43. $47. And now let's find side C first. So side C is here. This is side C. So in relationship with that 43, what is side C? Is that opposite, adjacent, or the hypotenuse? Opposite. And 14 is what they gave us. What is 14? Hypotenuse. What trig ratio uses opposite in the hypotenuse? Sine. Good. So we have the sine of 43 degrees equals opposite, which is C, over the hypotenuse. So go ahead and cross multiply and solve that for C. So what do you get for 14 times the sine of 43? 9.5. Raise your hand if you got 9.5. Okay. So we got C. And now we just need to find side D. Side D is adjacent. So adjacent and hypotenuse would be what ratio? Who agrees with Jasmine, who says it's cosine? Okay. So we got cosine of 43 degrees equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So D is equal to 14 times the cosine of 43. All right, did we get 10.2? Okay. And we have solved our triangle. All right, you do number 3. When you get your answer, raise your hand and I'll see if it's right. I'll give you a couple minutes to try to do it by yourself.
It's a lot easier to remember it being. First time is hard, for no reason. And where's that photo? Oh, it's still a lot of work, but it's not hard.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna start looking now. where did I answer it? I got that. Yep. Okay, hypotenuse is always across the line. Oh, okay, so if you're talking about this angle, you see how this F is right next to it? That means it's adjacent. And this is opposite. Adjacent means right next to it.
Why'd you look at me like a handball? That should not be the goal senior year, that should have been the goal the whole time.
So just remember, adjacent means right next to. So hypotenuse is always across from the 90 degree. It's the longest side. Adjacent means right next to. Opposite is across. So you can go ahead and check your answers. I'll give you a minute to make corrections. So angle F is 19. To find little f, I use cosine because that's adjacent and we have the hypotenuse. So you get 8.1, and then to find little d, I use sine and I got 23.6. Any questions? Who remembers this from geometry? Yeah. So 8.1 is a geometry review, pretty much. Okay, so now let's look at example 4. So this one is a little different because they only gave us one angle, which is the 90 degree. So let's draw it out first. We know that angle A, it says that angle A, no, it says angle C, sorry, let me get that right. Angle C is my right angle. So C has to be here, and then I'll put the A and the B. Then they also tell us little a is 11. So little a is across from big A. So the 15 is going to go here. And little b is across from angle B, so that has to be here. So we can't do triangle sum because we don't know any of we only know one angle. Okay, let me do A is 11. Oh, did I flip that? Let me fix that. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Let me start over. So little a is across from big A. So that would be here. Little b is across from big B. So that would be here. All right. Do y'all agree? Does it look good? All right. So what do we know? What two sides of the triangle do we know? We know if I'm going to start with angle A. If I'm using angle A, if my theta, I'm going to start with this angle. 11, is 11 opposite or adjacent to angle A? Opposite. What about 15? Is that adjacent or the hypotenuse? Adjacent. So for angle A, I know opposite and adjacent. What ratio uses opposite and adjacent? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent. So if there's anything you should know moving into the next test, it would be SOHCAHTOA. Because that SOHCAHTOA helps you remember what ratio you're using. So I know that the tangent of angle A is going to equal opposite over adjacent. So in order to solve for A, I have to take the inverse. That's how I cancel out, because I'm trying to solve for A. So to cancel out tangent, I have to put an inverse tangent on both sides. So what that's going to give me is angle A equals the inverse tangent of 11 over 15. So think inverse is inside. So now you have to hit the second function and then hit tangent. So inverse tangent of 11 over 15 should give you 36.3. Who got 36.3? All right, so now we can use triangle sum to find angle B, because we know two angles. So the measure of angle B is going to equal 180 minus 90 minus 36.3. So you should get 53.7. Who got 53.7? And then lastly, to find little c, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So c squared equals a squared plus b squared. We know a and b. We can only use Pythagorean theorem for a right triangle. And right now in 8.1, everything is a right triangle. So c squared equals 11 squared plus 15 squared. Go ahead and solve that for C. And who got 18.6 for C? All right, let's go ahead and draw example 5. Okay, so to get the decimal, you have to hit the button above, enter. That is how you get the decimal answer on the yellow calculators. All right, I want you to try to do example 5 by yourself. We're going to skip over 6. So we're doing 5, and we're doing, to get the decimal in the yellow calculator, does everyone see that button above enter? It has 2 triangles right above the enter key. Do you see the button? You see enter. You see the button above enter. Okay, hit the button above enter, and it converts it to a decimal. Did it work? Okay. All right, go ahead and set up example 5, and when you have your answers, raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I got.
Run into the fence. To the fence.
So, be careful with your Pythagorean theorem because you're not looking for the hypotenuse. So it should look different. You can go ahead and take a look at the diagram. Those are your three answers that I should be looking for. I think the main thing that's different is that we knew A and C. So we had to solve for B. So we had to do 12 squared equals 4.5 squared plus B squared. So you had to, you weren't looking for little c. You weren't looking for the hypotenuse because they gave us the hypotenuse. So we had to subtract it. We had to find, so c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So you should have 12 squared equals 4.5 squared plus b squared. We had to subtract that 4.5 squared and take the square root of that. So that would be the only thing. Just be careful because I think the main mistakes, number one, make sure you're drawing your diagram correctly. And that's about it. Okay, so we're gonna skip over 6 and go to example 7 and end with that one today. So a big part of your test will be word problems. And I think that it's just, you have to create diagrams that represent the situation. And remember, in 8.1, everything is a right triangle, okay? So when we're talking about angles of elevation and angles of depression, angle of elevation, can you underline that it's always at the ground? It's always at the bottom. So if I'm trying to find the angle of elevation, it should be at the bottom of the triangle. So I always think about if I'm trying to elevate, like it's just from this up, angle of elevation. Depression, the angle of depression is on the outside of the triangle. It's never inside the triangle. And usually, I always just remember to draw my triangle upside down. So whenever it says find the angle of depression, I always create a triangle that looks like this. And I know that I'm looking for the angle right here. So it says for angle of elevation, you think of it as in relation to movement of your eyes. If you're looking straight ahead, you must raise or elevate your head to see the top of the tree. But for an angle of elevation or depression, movement of your eyes, if you're looking at the top, you have to lower your eyes or depress your eyes. So you're looking down versus looking up. Okay, so let's just go ahead and end with example 7. First, we need to draw out our diagram. It says we have a tower. So I'm going to draw my tower. The tower has a shadow that's 60 feet long. And it has an angle of elevation with the sun. So I'm going to draw my right triangle. This is the angle of elevation right here. And that's 65 degrees. And they want us to find x. What trig ratio can I use? Raise your hand if you think it's sine. Who says cosine? Who says tangent? It is tangent because 60 degrees is what? Is that opposite or adjacent to that 65? Adjacent. The tower is opposite. So to solve this, we would have the tangent of 65 degrees equals opposite over adjacent. Remember, you cross multiply. So x equals 60 times the tangent of 65. Go ahead and type that in your calculator. And don't forget a unit whenever you're trying to find height or a measurement. So the tower is 128 feet. 128.7.
So are you looking for the side or the angle?
We're looking for the height. It says how tall, so right here, the question says how tall is the tower?
So the side?
The side. All right, so we'll end there. Please don't lose the packet. Again, bring it every day. We're going to be in this packet for the next couple of weeks.